Hey everybody, awesome. First off, if you are a tech entrepreneur and you're experiencing burnout, you're making bad decisions, period. Sorry. Why, you ask? Well, first of all, your brain isn't really seeing what's happening in any given situation. It's seeing the reptilian part of the brain and what it thinks. And the reptilian part of the brain always thinks of people as threats, even if they're your best option for success. And second, burnout drops your emotional intelligence by between 25 and 40%, which means that you're misreading people and you're messing up negotiations if you don't, and you're not properly supporting the people that get the job done for you every single day. Now, I could go on and on about a lot of other mental and emotional skills that don't function properly when you're burnt out, but you're tired. So I'm going to leave it at that. It should be enough. So the conventional wisdom about burnout doesn't actually fix burnout or give you what you need as an entrepreneur to have the kind of success that you want. So I read all kinds of things about having balance in your life, and that's great to prevent burnout, but it does nothing to stop burnout or to end it once you've already got it. So to stop it, radical intervention is needed, and don't worry, it's not going to hurt your business growth. When this radical three-pronged strategy is implemented simultaneously, entrepreneurs get healthy, and so do their bottom lines. And men must, much of the time, if that's one of your ambitions, with mostly in technology it is, the sales growth numbers hit new highs with ideas and strategies that your burnt out brain just couldn't see, which shocks most entrepreneurs. Now, most business leaders, most entrepreneurs, most founders and corporate leaders today are still in denial about burnout, even though it's being talked about a lot. And the enormous costs to their businesses aren't really being accounted for, which unfortunately, if we do nothing about this, it's going to end up in a lot of businesses failing. And it just doesn't have to be that way, because burnout can be fixed in only 5 weeks. But I'm skipping ahead. So this workshop is supposed to be about the hard numbers on burnout. But I'm going to be doing a different topic because I think you really need some inspiration today. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Leskew. I have 2 unique qualifications that nobody else in the world has that allows me to teach burnout to stop burnout in only 5 weeks. The first is that I have more than 18,000 hours of personal meditation practice. And I've trained more than 3,400 different types of leaders, majority of them entrepreneurs, on various type of meditation to solve problems. So most of them, as I said, are entrepreneurs, but most of them didn't come to me for burnout. Most of them came to me for other reasons, but they were experiencing burnout. Most of them that had businesses were failing, they couldn't handle the emotional strain or the mental strain anymore. And most of them, and quite a few of them after the fact, have told me that they had saved their lives because they came and got help, because some of them were considering suicide, unfortunately. So I was going to teach you a technique today. But in talking to other entrepreneurs this week that just don't get it, that burnout is holding them back in huge ways, I decided to share some inspiring stories about overcoming burnout that leads to the massive success stories that people are looking for. And again, by stopping burnout. So what I found was that the other technique was actually holding entrepreneurs back because it was giving them short-term relief. And the purpose was to give them hope that they could stop burnout. But instead, they were thinking that this technique was going to solve this problem on their own. And it's only the beginner part of the 3 parts of stopping burnout in 5 weeks equation. So it wasn't helping anyone. So here are the 2 success stories that we're going to go about going deep into the burnout to the point of almost losing everything. And then they did the 3 steps to stop burnout, and their success amazed them with the speed that they were able to stop burnout, and that the fact that stopping burnout led them to achieve both their business and personal outcomes that they'd been struggling with, and sometimes for years. So the first one that I'm going to tell you about is a very large tech company and a very successful one too. And they brought me in for a workshop because they were dealing with enormous pressure, and many people on the top executive team, including the president, were struggling with early stage burnout. And he didn't know it, and neither did they. So some of the other key players in the executive team were getting deeper into burnout, and nobody was recognizing it except for the HR manager. But she didn't know what it was. She knew that something was wrong, but she didn't know about burnout, and she didn't know how to fix it. So luckily somebody had told them that meditation was very helpful to manage stress. And as soon as I talked to them, I knew like these are way beyond stress. And there was a lot of resistance to admitting it because it's seen as being a failure. Now, first off, this is crazy. This is like saying our product has a big bug in it and we tell everybody that it's fine, even when the customers aren't getting what they need. And maybe that's a bad example because the tech industry does this all the time. So this is actually a sign of burnout because you can't think through a problem correctly and come to the right conclusion and get the right answer. So back to my story. The president of this company was very reluctant to have me there. And I walked through some techniques to solve problems using techniques that stopped burnout, and you could feel the change in the room and they noticed it. The president made a comment, and so did one of their top engineers. And it was actually the top engineer who was the biggest skeptic to begin with. He really wanted no part of me being there. And he ended up asking the deepest questions because he asked me, how did this work? I just got insight to a problem that's been plaguing us for 4 years now with a viable answer, one that I couldn't see before. And I just thought of something that was a completely new approach to the problem. So other people in the room started talking about issues that had been under the surface that now they felt like they could address and solve. And a few of them were very emotional because they were even thinking of quitting because they weren't happy anymore because every day it was just too hard to deal with the negative emotions. So if people are suppressing emotions, that stops their brain from solving problems. It's that simple. All the things that I've been talking about here, the lack of communication, the feeling threatened, the feeling you can't put things out on the table, and the lack of problem solving are all signs of early stage burnout. Now, this was an executive team, but the exact same things happens every day to entrepreneurs, except entrepreneurs have more influence over every area of the company than an individual executive does. But either way, problems aren't getting solved when people at the top have burnout. So near the end of this workshop, the president asked me why his team was always coming up with excuses. And I told him it's not personal, it's brains. When your brain gets burnt out, when anybody's brain gets burnt out, the reptilian part gets stuck on. It's clicked on and it interprets everything and everybody as a threat, even when that person or whatever information is coming to them is actually the solution to the problem that needs to be fixed at that time. Now, he took me seriously and he started a daily meditation practice. So whenever he had a problem with anybody on his team, he did his best to meditate before dealing with it first. Now, he told me it was like he had a whole new team because he was getting the best of them. Instead of the ones that were in burnout, the ones that he was getting when he was in burnout. And he also told me he was about to fire some of the people on the team, but he didn't because he recognized that it was their brains in the wrong state and his, and that this was causing the reason why they couldn't do their jobs. Now, I had the HR VP manager crying at this retreat because she told me that it was the first time in almost a year that she felt like she could handle all the problems and the personalities and negotiating truces between all the people that were there because that had become almost her full-time role. And instead, she was able to get back to what she really loved about HR, which was building an amazing culture. I mean, it wasn't really her job, or it shouldn't be her job to be negotiating truces. Now, it's impossible to build an amazing culture if people are burnt out for all of the reasons that I've just told you about and more. So one of the first things that this leader did was to ensure at all team meetings that people were taking the time to check their brain states. Now, I didn't tell her to do that. When she experienced it for herself, she recognized that this was just obvious. She knew it was going to save a ton of work for her team. She knew it was going to save herself a ton of work, and it was going to start to repair damaged relationships by preventing the reptilian parts of the brain, which are reactionary, from being the ones that were running the meetings. So later she told me that she'd been looking for another job and she didn't quit just because she learned this one thing. So if you're burnt out right now, chances are you have some top people that are looking for alternate employment right now and that are looking to leave your team because they're in burnout too. Now, most of the time, if you fix burnout, you will recognize other people that are in burnout and you'll be able to help them before it goes too far, which means that you'll be able to retain talented employees and top executives and top C-suite people. And majority of them, it's this, like it was for this VP, if that's the only cause of their discontent, they're going to stay. So much of the tech industry, I mean, the turnover is so enormously high, and the biggest reason for it is burnout and burnout culture. So imagine the forward progress that could happen, that if instead of replacing talented people all the time because you're burning them out, you could develop the people that you already have, which is what this tech VP has done, HR VP. And now that's where she's spending the majority of their time. And their company results were outstanding in the year following that. So by stopping burnout, this company was able to pivot and to fix some very old problems that the company and others in the industry were having and they weren't able to solve. And not just burnout, I mean technical problems. So this gave them a competitive advantage, which people attributed to a technology solution, but it was really a stop burnout solution. Because if they haven't stopped burnout, they wouldn't have found the tech answers because nobody's brain was in a capacity to be able to find it. And it had been sitting in front of them for 4 years. But when your brain state is off, like it is when you're in burnout, nobody can see the solutions, even the smartest people in the room. But when you stop burnout and the solutions are right there in front of you, your brain can see them, which is exactly what happened in this case. And it's happened in more companies now than I can count that we have trained them to do this. So stop burnout and problems get solved and growth happens. It's that simple. It's a very direct relationship. So in case this wasn't obvious, and I know with a burned out brain, you can have a hard time seeing the positives, and that's not personal. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just biology. It's just our wiring. Burnout drops intelligence on a number of factors. So let me just do a little rehash here. First thing, problem solving ability and loses creativity, and it loses our ability to see innovative solutions when a brain is in burnout, especially top people. Now, the predominant way to solve problems when you're burnt out is that you don't find the creative things. You can't see the creative things. You just do things that you did in the past, even if they don't work. So if you're in an industry that relies on innovation, how long do you think your company is going to last if you're only repeating things that didn't work in the past? Okay, so that's number one. Number 2 point from this, mistakes go way up, which means that you're paying people to redo things that they should have done right the first time. People severely underestimate this. When people stop burnout, top people and even medium level people in the organization, and they aren't making mistakes, they can typically get their jobs done in just a few hours per day. And what used to take with burnout 12 to 14 hours per day. Now, people think they're exaggerating until they actually experience it for itself. The reason why this is they're not having to fix mistakes. And it generally takes 4 to 5 times as long to fix a mistake as it does to do it right the first time. And that cost doesn't include the cost of what you're losing in customers just walking with their business and going someplace else. Okay, the third point from this that's really important is, and this one should be number one, but entrepreneurs don't seem to understand the strategic value of this one, so I'm giving it to you third, and that's emotional intelligence. If you work with other people, if you negotiate, then you are missing up to 40% of the important clues in interactions with other people, which means that you're getting interactions in your interpretation of them wrong. You might think that you have agreement on something. You might think that you have consensus on something, and really the other person's like, I'm not buying any of this at all. Or you might overlook something that's critical in order to get the outcome you're looking for. So, in the CEO that I just told you about in this story told me that it's like he had a whole new team that was at a much higher level of ability. Now, the only difference was his ability to stop burnout and using that higher level of emotional intelligence. And he got performance out of people that he didn't even know was possible, including people that he thought that he was going to have to let go, that he was going to have to fire. But instead, some of these people created their company's competitive advantage in the following year. And he told me without learning to stop burnout, this would never have happened. He also told me he was able to get his work done and get home to his family, and that transformed relationships with his whole family, and he was the happiest that he'd ever been. Now, that was one story. This next story is somebody that I taught to stop burnout in May. And I taught her 3 things to stop burnout, and she took it to heart. And she realized that she was spinning her wheels in her C-suite level role in a fast growth company. And she was starting to make a lot of mistakes, and she couldn't think clearly like she used to. Now, that she was lucky because she started to catch burnout in its really early stages, and about 70% of the population is in early stage burnout right now. So there's lots of people like her. So this is where all working age people and kids, because unfortunately their parents are burnt out, and when that happens, they can't recognize the symptoms in their kids. And because she was able to stop burnout, and she was the only one on her C-suite level team that was able to stop and reverse burnout, she was able to prevent the company from hiring somebody for a key role that just wasn't qualified, and it was an extremely important strategic role. So her whole team was exhausted that they didn't catch some key things in the interview process. Everybody just wanted to get it done instead of get it right. Like, let's just get over this, because their burnt out brains couldn't see how making a better decision was strategic for the company. But because she had been able to reverse burnout, she started to recognize it. And she saw that this person was avoiding talking about many aspects of their experience. So before being burnt out, their team had a very direct way of dealing with issues, especially when it came to being proactive around problems. Now, nobody else on the interview team noticed this but her. They all said, no problem, it's fine. And if the person they were interviewing made excuses, they just said, it's for whatever reason. But this was an essential part of them getting their job done. And they just said, it's no problem. When it comes to doing the actual job, they'll do it. And she knew this was unlikely to be true. So she set about getting proof, and she stopped the hire. She dug a little deeper. And at first, the team was really angry with her. It's like, why are you trying to prevent us from getting the help we need? But then they were able to hire somebody much better, because her not burned out brain anymore, her now getting to high performance brain, was able to find somebody much better that is achieving objectives and getting along with the other C-suite players, and is taking the pressure off the others on the team, which means that the workload is going down for everybody. So that's what happens when you stop burnout. So prior to stopping burnout, she would have just passed this decision, and she would have just said, yeah, go ahead, because it would have been easier, just like everybody else on the team. Just get it done, go on to the next scene, even when the decision is wrong and has major downsides for the team not getting the work done. So that's how a burnout brain works. It looks for the shortest way out, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's wrong, and even when it's going to make the problem worse, which what this one was. And it was going to cause, and often that causes delays and mistakes and more work. Now, there are some very important health ramifications about burnout as well. And this person that I was talking about that was able to reverse burnout, C-suite player, was developing stress-related ulcers in their stomach from too much coffee and too much stimulants and drinks, combined with fast food diet because they didn't have time to eat properly. Now, this would put her off from work for sure, meaning time off entirely, and her position would have been extremely difficult to replace over the short term, probably even the medium term. So by stopping burnout, it changed the food that she was craving, that her body wanted, because it was sending different signals to her brain, and because it wasn't in fight or flight mode all the time. Now, unfortunately, burnout is a huge cause of diseases in many people, especially in entrepreneurs and tech industry and people with a lot of responsibility. And in fact, most healthcare could be avoided just by stopping burnout, because burnout affects so many different parts of the body, from the nervous system to sleep to eating. And today, the majority of the healthcare costs go to the so-called lifestyle diseases and are caused by all the things that I just mentioned. So the drain on your business due to lifestyle diseases is more than just higher insurance costs. Hiring the wrong person costs you 9 to 10 times of what you pay them in terms of mistakes. And it's very interesting that those costs are very consistent with the costs of burnout, meaning that you're 9 to 10 times more likely to make a mistake, to make your business go out of business if you're an entrepreneur that has burnout. So in this case, the person that they were about to hire could have put them out of business for non-performance on contracts, because this was the only reason that they were being hired. So instead, by stopping burnout in this case, that didn't happen. And they found somebody else that could deliver and is delivering on their commitments. And the company is growing and the overall workload is down because of less mistakes. Now, this is typical of every single entrepreneur that I have trained to stop burnout. They stop burnout, they make better decisions, they work less, their overall health improves, and then the company grows, and this is really important, in healthy ways. And by healthy, I mean that the work is good quality and the pace is sustainable. Now, I know that you're burnt out, so I'm not going to tell you any more success stories here. My goal is to inspire you about what is possible, because most people think that what they're doing right now is the path to success, or it's the only path. But if you're so tired that you're burnt out, then how do you expect to be successful? I can tell you that success starts when burnout stops. And I see it over and over and over. So big opportunities come when you have your space in the brain to handle them. So give yourself and give your business the best chance to succeed and stop burnout. And I would love to help you do that. If you feel inspired from these stories, then I'm putting together a small group to do a program together that I've used before to successfully stop burnout. But I haven't had to teach it in a while because I've been teaching other topics. So if you want to be part of this group, then look in the links for this video. I put a Calendly link in the comments, and you can book a one-on-one with me, and we can talk about where to go next. So see you on our one-to-one call. Thank you, guys.